Is it? Listen, apply, become.
Everybody.
Say Say yeah.
Yeah.
Say boss.
Bye.
There you go.
Hello everybody.
Good morning, folks. We're here again.
Yes, as usual, my name is Ono.
And I'm Debbie. We have someone.
I like to describe him as our children's godfather. I like to also call him our children's uncle. The one whom we should be willing to entrust in the care of our children.
Well, mine is along that line too. In this era where we have child's rights acts and advocacies going on, you expect that there are more women in this field and all, but we have men acting as covers, and one of those few men is this person we have on. So shall I unveil?
Yes, please.
So we have Mr. Taiwo Akinlami in the building.
Good morning, Mr. Taiwo.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. God is my strength, my shield, my buckler.
Taiwo Akinlami is a lifetime change pilgrim who seeks change through knowledge, practices change through discipline, and disseminates change through his lived values. Also a consultant to UNICEF on the Child's Rights Act 2003. He's also assistant editor of the Nigerian Weekly Law Reports 2001 and 2004. Are there any other things you need to know?
Basically, I had a childhood that was troubled. Or let me say I never had childhood. Because when you talk about childhood, there are 5 fundamental characteristics of childhood. The first one is curiosity. When you take curiosity away from a child, we have 80% of childhood left. The second one is freedom. When you take freedom away from a child, you have 60% of childhood left. The third one is joy. When you take joy away from a child, you have 40% of childhood left. The fifth one is innocence. When you take innocence away from a child, you have 20% of childhood left. Now, the fifth one is creativity. When you take creativity away from a child, you have 0% of childhood left. And if you never have childhood, you can never have adulthood, because you can put something on nothing and expect it to stand. Adulthood is to be built on childhood. So when you lose these fundamental characteristics of childhood, you cannot be a sound adult. And for the first 27 years of my life, childhood was supposed to last between age 0 and 18. I never had childhood. And between 18 and 27, I had to continue in that mode until February 16, 1997, when I gave my life to Christ. And when I tell you I gave my life to Christ, I'm not a preacher, I don't run a church, and I'm not trying to make what I call your program. I'm just talking about what has worked for me. I mean, if you talk to a Buddhist will talk to you about what has worked for him. So this is what has worked for me. And as I always say when I talk to people, that this one that has worked for me, I highly recommend it. I can vouch for it. So basically, that was my background. I suffered immense abuse, not because my parents were wicked people, my parents were good people, but unfortunately they didn't know what it means to bring up children. Like many parents today try to bring up children, they don't understand that for you to bring up children, you have to understand 3 fundamental things. And number 1, you need knowledge. Knowledge is what to do. Number 2, you need skills. Skill is how to do it. Number 3, you need attitude. Attitude is the fortitude to do that which you know you should do. Now, we don't have these 3 in place as a matter of necessity. I can say with oracular precision that you're going to abuse children once you don't have knowledge of what to do. You don't have skills of how to do it. You don't have attitude, the fortitude to do that which you do. What happens is that you are definitely going to abuse children.
One of those things I found out is that you talked about 3 phases of your life. Can you please elaborate on those 3?
Well, I said my life is divided into 3 seasons. 3 seasons. Season 1, it is 0 to 18, where I suffered immense abuse. There are 4 ways by which a child can be abused. 4. The first one is physical abuse. The second one is emotional abuse. The third one is sexual abuse. The fourth one is neglect. I suffered all of them bountifully. I said my childhood was a bountiful harvest of abuses. Lost my virginity at the age of 6. That was the year I started primary school, and my mother would go to the market, leave me with this particular woman who was a neighbor, and this woman would strip me naked and play with every part of my body, do with a 6-year-old boy what a man should do with a woman. And before I knew it, my sexuality was awoken. Before I knew it, I started having sexual relations with other children. Before I knew it, I started having anal sex with another teenager. In today's balance, we call it homosexuality. Before I knew it, I have taken my father's neighbor's daughter into my father's bedroom and had molested her sexually, and I'd warned her not to tell anybody. So that was my childhood. I started smoking at the age of 12. At the age of 12 years, that's the year I started secondary school. I started drinking much earlier because my father smoked and he drank. And so my parents were not wicked people, as I've said. I told my story when I turned 40. I did a CD which I called SSS, Stories, Senses and Stones. Stories are my stories, senses are the things that are the principles that I've learned, then stones are the instructions for people. So I documented that. That was my childhood. I never had one. All those things that I told you took childhood away from me. Second season, age 18 to 27, I began to live in the effect of my childhood abuse. I was not suffering from low self-esteem. I was suffering from no esteem. I wasn't even aware that I was existing. Two things governed my life: what I would drink and what I would eat, and what people would say. I wanted to be in everybody's good book. And so if anybody smiled at me, I could faint, because somebody's smiling at me. When I got to year 1 in the university, I couldn't speak in class because I felt that to speak in class, if I missed what I wanted to say, was international embarrassment. Because many times I knew what the lecturer wanted us to say, and many times I won't be able to say it. When somebody said it, I was going to feel bad that, it was my opportunity to shine and I never took it. And so I was in the students' union. Everybody thought I was strong, I was mighty, but I was suffering. I was dealing with issues. I was hooked on cigarette, India hemp. I was hooked on masturbation, all kinds of things. My life was going down the drain. And so it was like that for another 9 years, 18 to 27. And at 27, something unique happened to me. I gave my life to Christ. And when I gave my life to Christ, a week before I'd met a gentleman called Pastor Kunle Shoyo. He had spoken to me about the need for me to give my life to Christ. I had rebuffed him, and so later that week on a Sunday in my room, I gave my life to Christ. And when I did, I called him. I saw him in school on Monday, and I saw him and took me to where I fellowship right now. I've been in that church since then till now, the Fountain of Life Church. That's where I worship. And they say people change church. I don't know how they do it. God met my need in that place and made it a place of destiny for me under the leadership of my pastor, Pastor Tao Ubiko. So that's the beginning of the third season. But that the season I've been in 18 years. God has helped me to be able to deal with the impact of my upbringing. Now, this is it. People say that if not that my father did this or my father did that, I began to say that change is an ever-present possibility for anybody who's ready to take responsibility. Now, my parents did not treat me well. Yes, when they stand before God, they are going to give an account of how they raised me. When I stand before God, I'm going to give an account of how I raised myself. So I cannot continue to say my father did, my mother did, and continue to live in that, because at the end of the day, when I become unimportant, when I become irrelevant, when I cannot even find a place in the footnote of history, the world is not going to excuse me on the basis of how my mother treated me or my father treated me. The world is not going to do that. Hitler was an abused child. He slaughtered 62 million people. That was 2.5% of the entire population of the world. He was not forgiven. He has not won Nobel or put in the Global Hall of Fame, if there's anything like that. He didn't admit that was an abused child. Anini was an abused child. Joseph Stalin was an abused child. All these people troubled our world. But the world did not take into cognizance the fact that they were abused, which might be the hypocrisy of our world. But the foundational thing is that no matter how you were raised, a time comes when you must begin to raise yourself. And you see, what I talk about today when I speak in churches, or I speak in schools and organizations and companies, is to talk about those principles that I've applied in the last 18 years that have made a difference. I'm just a storyteller. I tell stories of my past. I tell a story of the intervention by God, and I tell stories of the fruit that I've seen thereof, and I tell stories of the principles that I've applied that have made a difference for me. And so basically that's it.
Okay, thank you. how would you be able to explain to us what Christ has done in your life?
Let me start by saying that I don't know the kind of Christ you meet that does not transform your life. I've never attended any therapy. I was hooked on cigarette, I was hooked on Indian hemp, I was hooked on all kinds of things. I was a sex addict, pornography, and all the rest of it. All I had to offer was brokenness and shame. And it made something beautiful of my life. I read in my Bible, it said when they look at James and John, Peter and John, that they saw they were unschooled men, they reckoned that they have been with Jesus. So what happened to me simply was that I gave my life to Jesus. It became a permanent reference point in my diary of change. And God connected me with mentors. Basically, I think I met Christ, I met his people, and I identified 5 fundamental principles, that have kept me and I've found in Christ. The number one principle is you just need to love yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, your change will be under pressure. What will people say? But when you love yourself, you accept yourself, you know that there's nothing wrong with me as at today. Now that makes change easy, because anything that is done under pressure cannot be permanent. So it doesn't matter who's around, it has to be that I am changing because I know I have a better promise in God through Christ Jesus, and that's number one. Number two is the fact that I must not live in denial. Many people live in denial today. They are not ready to speak up. They are not ready to take a look at their past and tell themselves what actually happened to them. I took time to look into the nooks and crannies of my entire life. I stared at my past and I identified things that were wrong, in my upbringing. I told myself the brutal truth. If you deceive everybody, there's someone you must not deceive: yourself. Because if you deceive yourself, you are going to limit yourself. Now, how do you identify your present and plan for your future? If a people that forgot their history dies, how much more a people that do not know their history? You need to know your history. Socialization is the father of psychology. The way you are socialized is going to determine your mindset. 80% of the personality of the child is formed between age 2 and 6. You need to take a look at your past. Then number 3, you need to take responsibility to lead yourself. The second person you are going to lead is your family. Before you begin to lead your community. If you don't lead yourself, you can't lead your family. If you can't lead your family, you can't lead the community. So you must take responsibility. You don't make excuses, you take responsibility. I cannot continue to mourn. I decided to take responsibility. And the fourth thing is that you must recognize the requirement for healing. What do I need to do to get healing? Because Lord, the Bible says when a man is in Christ, he's a new creature. All things have passed away, everything has become new. But the truth is, what passed away for you is different from what has passed away for me. What has passed away for me is going to be my constant source of temptation, because I've tasted it before. And the enemy has a way of bringing to you what has been your weakness before. I must identify what has passed away, and I must identify to ensure that they are permanently passed away. I will be tempted in that area. When I'm tempted in those areas, when I'm tempted in the area of sex, when I'm tempted to do things that are contrary, I don't feel condemned. That is temptation. And I refuse to be condemned, because I understand the things that I must not do and the things that I will do. So I must recognize the requirement for healing. Number 5 is that I must subscribe to the healing process. It's one thing for me to recognize the requirement for healing. It's another thing for me to subscribe. Subscription means I want to read books. Subscription means I want to talk to a mentor. I want to listen to a DVD. I want to stay and understand who I am and where I'm coming from. The last one is you must now submit to the healing process. Let me tell you something. There are many people who are subscribers. Nigeria is a country of subscribers. That is why you see people go for training. They put the certificate of the training in their office, but the training is not in them. They put the certificate of the training in their CV, but the CV is not in them. I've met people who have said they have attended leadership program, this program, that program, but when we relate with them, we find that there's nothing like leadership in them. When do you submit? You submit when you allow the knowledge that you have to govern your behavior. If your knowledge cannot govern your behavior, is simply information. You are not ready for transformation. Information does not transform. What transforms is the true knowledge that you have that is tangible.
Your father and husband. So we'd also like you to shed some light about that beautiful woman behind Taiwo Akinlami.
Yeah, my wife. What can I say about my wife? I have been in Christ. I got married at the age of 26, and so I gave my life to Christ at the age of 27. I dated my wife for 2 years. We courted for 2 years, and for that period I've had time to reflect on my past, to deal with some things. And so when we're meeting, I brought everything before her to say this is what it used to be, this is what has happened. And she didn't have a problem with it. She believes that there's a future that she sees, there's a present that is worth investing in. And so we keep up the relationship. 9 years ago, we've been married. God has been faithful in keeping us. We have not experienced one.
I love that smile.
We have not experienced one scandal, and we by the grace of God, we are not going to, because my wife's strength is my glory, is my gain, and our weaknesses have become my own ministry, and vice versa. We know areas where I'm strong, and when I'm speaking in that area, she listens. And we know areas where she's strong. When she's speaking in that area, I listen. For example, I don't pick what I wear. I'm not fashion oriented. I don't know how to combine colors. But my wife is an expert at that. She knows, before she goes out, I say, love, this is what I'm wearing today. Please let me check it out. Does this go with this? Does this go with it? And she advises me. Now she's from the upper crust. I mean, she's been traveling all her life. She's born with a silver spoon. Her father is a double PhD. One of the PhD fathers is in petroleum engineering. So it's from the upper crust. I came from the village where I lived in a house in Ondo where we never had toilet. That's the circumstances under which I grew up. I was never shovel driven to school one day. My wife was shovel driven to school. A driver would wait for her in school. But God has been able to bring us together, because it's not about your background, really. It's about the values you begin to imbibe. She's a woman of value who looks beyond the background. When we got married, things were rough, things were tough. I was trying to do the things that I'm doing right now. And it's not easy in this country trying to do something for yourself. The nation has no plan for you, and you have to put things together by yourself. And it was tough, it was rough. And particularly, you are now in an area that people believe that you must be out of the mind. Children's rights, child protection, different. And so, but what my wife always says that you say God spoke to you. He said this is what you are supposed to be doing. For one day, she never discouraged me. She kept telling me, push, do what you have to do. And today, we are not where we want to be, but we are not where we used to be. Things are different, things are getting better, things are taking shape.
Okay, wonderful. For someone who cares about children so much, do you have any kids?
I don't have children yet.
Okay. Now tell us about your academy.
Number one, our academy is to bring to the very front runner of public consciousness the rights and the responsibilities of the African child for due respect in the best interest of the child. We believe that matter that has to do with children have been swept under the carpet for children, and children are not seen, not to talk of being held. And in this part of the world, a lot of people are raising children by virtue of how they were raised. And they have never sat down to take an account of how they were raised, to see whether they were raised is anything to drive home about. And they tell you that I've become who I've become today because of the way I was raised. And I ask you, how were you raised? And what have you become, for God's sake? Maybe you have become the president of this country. Is that your ultimate? Is that what you were created to be? What was your true potential? Have you been able to achieve it? So you need to learn about childhood. I began to learn about childhood 18 years ago when I gave my life to Christ. And I began to learn everything that I know about childhood. I didn't experience it. I learned it. What I experienced was the opposite of how a child should not be treated. And so when I recognized how a child should not be treated, I began to understand how children should be treated. Over 200 people have passed through the academy. Right now we have over 300 people in the academy. Child Protection Advanced is where we train people to be able to train our programs. We want to give them the franchise to our program. There are places we cannot get to. We need to democratize this process of helping people who are working with children, both as primary caregiver, those are the parents and guardians, and secondary caregivers, schools, nannies, and everybody who entrusts with children with these things are not won by virtue of age or by virtue of position or by virtue of what you read. It's something you have to study, and if you must study them, you have to sacrifice. The same way you sacrifice to do postgraduate, to do courses in your office because you want to excel. You have to do that. But what we have found is that society has a fortitude of judging who is successful. Success is only considered from the perspective of what you have achieved in terms of the targets you have met, the places you have been, the companies you have opened, the houses you have built. not understanding that the Ghanaian proverb says the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people. So also the prosperity of a people begins in the homes of its people. So family comes first. Family is number one. Now let me tell you, there are 4 wings of protection. The first one is the family. The second one is the community. The third one, now in the community you have the church, you have the school, you have the media, you have your neighbor. That's in the community. Then you have the state. Now you have the international community. Now let me tell you, the international community cannot play the role of the state. The state cannot play the role of the community. Community cannot play the role of the family. Now note that the family is number one in that order. Number one. That is why if you are looking for a good school, if your definition of a good school is a school where you take your child and you hands up, there is no such school. The only good school that I know is that parents will bring 30%, the school will bring 70%. Any school that is set up, that is promising parents that I can raise your children without you, is a setup for failure, because it does not have capacity by nature and the arrangement of things to be able to do that. Now, because the child must be hearing one voice. When the child does not hear one voice, the child becomes confused. The child is with you tell the child that pornography is not good. The child goes to another house, they don't have age limits, they just watching anything, and the child is watching it, and the child is growing up. A lot of confusion is in the mind of the child, and the child is thinking, is it right, is it not right? So the child says he's a free thinker. The child says when you go to Rome, you behave like a Roman. So the child become a sissy person. He's never have a stand. He's neither here nor there. So you send the child abroad. You say, okay, go to school. You meet some people who say they are homosexuality or lesbianism. Before you know it, he begins to join. ISIS is already recruiting people from Nigeria. But when you label a child, that the child talks to, what is going to happen is that the day the child needs to speak up, when somebody is touching her private part, when somebody is trying to molest her, she's going to keep quiet because you have told her the child talks too much. And so we tell parents that there are 3 sins you can commit against the destiny of the child. 3. The number 1 sin you can commit is the sin of silence. You can rock the boat when you lose a promotion in office. You can rock the boat when somebody tries to hit your car on the road. You can rock the boat when your landlord did not give you all the things he promises you. But when it comes to children, we don't want to rock the boat. There's no war that children are not casualties. But tell me, in the history of humanity, there's no war that have been fought because of children. Then the second sin is sin of tyranny. You just believe that by virtue of the father you're an adult, you know more than the child. You say, I'm your father, I'm your teacher, I know more. No, you don't, because you see, you are not the one living in this world today. You are not living in this world at the environment in which the child is living. If you must help the child, you must learn of the child, then you must not learn from the child. Learning of the child means you are going to read about the child, you are going to study about the child, you are going to look at the researches about the child. Armed with the knowledge of the child, you now go and learn from the child, because the knowledge of the child will help you to interpret learning from the child. You are able to understand what the child is doing. I study them, I ask them questions. I'm intrigued by these personalities called children. They are very interesting, smart. I am smarter than the world is ready to give them credit, and that is why we cannot see their dreams. The third sin we commit against the child is the sin of labeling. We label children, and most of the times we label them according to what we have found to be their weaknesses, what we call their weaknesses. You talk too much, you cannot talk, you are slow, you are retarded. As you are saying it, the child is soaking it in. One of the things that children look for is identity. So when you give birth to your child, you call your child on Olapo. You call your child Oluwawemima and the rest. That's the name you call the child the day you were happy. But that name does not have any meaning until you treat the child according to the tenets and the values of that name. Now, but as time goes by, you begin to call the child foolish. Your own joy is that that's not the name I gave him, because the day I gave him name, I brought oil, I brought adun, I brought sugar, I brought all these things. So those are the things that give a child a name. No, sugar and all those things are just symbols. The real thing that gives a child that gives a child his identity is the voice of authority in the life of the child. So when you say the child is a fool, no, very soon the child will begin to behave like a fool.
Very, very insightful things we heard in here today. So how can we guide entertainment and media in the development of the child?
We did an extensive research into the media, and because we know that media is a major evil anywhere in the world. Media is a strong force, and media is even underrated. And everybody has become a publisher today. The Twitter handle, some followership, with your text messages and the rest of it. But the foundational thing again is that children, when you look at nature, you understand what God is trying to do. Now, do you think it doesn't cost God anything for children to be falling from the sky? And they will have fallen from the sky and fall into somewhere. So, but for the fact that God brought them through a man and a woman is a sign that they are supposed to be taken care of and guided by the man and a woman. And so the family needs to create a system. We call it child protection system. In With Your Child and the Media, we give statistics of what media is doing to children and how parents can censor. And for you to do any of this, you need time. I mean, if you are runaway parents, please know that an orphan is not a child whose parents are dead. An orphan is a child whose parents are not available, dead or alive. And so you find out that you cannot, and the placard that children are carrying around today is vacancy. His parents apply with them. Today, people who are married, under the same roof, they live together. But one of them is the only one parenting the child because the other one does not have time. But the men, they don't have time. They have to win bread and the rest of it. So the foundational thing is that research has now told us that your children don't watch what you regulate. They watch what you watch. They don't watch what you regulate. They watch what you watch. So whatever you don't want your children to watch, you don't watch. What you watch is your children don't watch. So there's family time for TV. So what are the things we want to watch? The kind of life I live today is that I believe that my value dictates everything that I do, including what I dance to, including what I drink. I cannot say I want to enjoy myself today and go and sit there in Fela's shrine and be smoking in there. Now there was a time I was doing that because my value admitted it. I cannot say I want to look at women dancing. I want to look at naked women dancing. Whatever I do, my value is the regulatory body. And let me tell you something. Value is stronger than will. People think will is strong. Will is very strong. The will of man is very strong. But value is the governor of will. Because the book that I read says, a man who has no rule over his spirit is like a city without wall. The Bible is written in context. There's a setting. In the days when the Bible were written, every city was surrounded by walls. Every city. You read the story of the wall of Jericho. You read the story of Ai and all these cities. They were surrounded by walls. So the writer Solomon was writing and was looking at those cities that are without wall. He was saying that they were open to enemies. They were open to all kinds of attacks. And that is why you find that a city without a person without rule over his spirit. So if you have children, you want to raise those children along the line of your values. So you want to decide what your children are going to watch, what they are not going to watch. You want to decide whether you want to see what you are going to expose your children to before you expose them to it. And so those are basic things that is important. Now, we cannot overemphasize the fact that society is porous. We cannot overemphasize the fact that things have gone haywire. We cannot overemphasize the fact that parents today allow their children to listen to music that has no bearing. They are shaking my bag for you, or baby pullover and the rest of it. They are saying that it is not right for schools to be playing for children adult content. Yes, why should I bring to my house poison? And I'm not doing all my effort to guide my children from eating poison. That the best thing would have been that I shouldn't bring poison to my house in the first instance by virtue of my value. So the best thing should have been for people to come together and say, no, let us buy only what we need. And if it's only one channel that I want to buy, let me do pay as you go and let me buy that channel and let me watch that channel instead of bringing a bundle of distractions to my house and I'm hoping that my children will not see.
That's a fantastic strategy.
So I think that husband and wife should come together. First, determine how many children they want to have. Determine after that, how do we want to raise these children? Now, also determine first of all, what does it mean to raise children? What is our position about divorce, finances? All those things will be stated in the family constitution. On a final note, what I would like to say is that please, I want you to know that a child has only one problem. Anywhere in the world, in Lagos, in Abuja, in Benin, during the election, after the election, in Yemen, in America, in London, in UAE, a child has only one problem. In Tabon, in Ologun, in Banana Island, in Ileko, in Yomologi, a child has only one problem. The only problem the child has is the ignorance of those who are raising him. The child does not have two problems. So anytime you see a child not fulfilling destiny, not being protected, check out the ignorance of those who are raising the child. Then lastly, there are two kinds of people in the life of the child. You can't find the third one. Only two kinds of people in the life of the child. The first one, anytime you appear before a child, you are in one of these categories. The first one is those who are part of the child's solution, the second one are those who are part of the child's problem. The question you must ask yourself, therefore, at every point in time, are you part of their problem? Are you part of their solution? You must understand that the children are the pivotal link between today and tomorrow. Remove children from the equation, there's no tomorrow. Now, there's no better way to end our world. We don't need flood. We don't need all those things anymore. We just need to stop having children. Stop having children, all the people right now will die off, and that will be the end of this world. So if you understand that children are the pivotal link between today and tomorrow, what are you going to do? You are going to pay attention to them. By then you are safeguarding the future, you are guiding the present. And that's why we say, when you think the child, you think today, then you think the future. In just one thought, when you think the child, you are thinking today, because you are laying the foundation for tomorrow. When you think to the child, you are thinking the future, because the child is an embodiment of today and tomorrow. The children are not leaders of tomorrow. Please note, children are leaders of today, because leadership simply means ability to take responsibility. When does the child take responsibility? The child takes responsibility from the womb. When the child is born and the child comes to this world, he's going to cry out, wah, 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 I'm here, don't bury me, I'm alive. That is responsibility. And when the child needs you to carry him or her, no matter how deep you are sleeping, when a child wants you to carry him or her, it's called child stimulation. The child needs you, the child will wake you up, the child will cry, you will wake up. Nobody will sleep in the apartment, so you have to carry the child. He will let you know that I need to be breastfed now. That is responsibility. When the child begins to grow up, you say, come, take this remote control, go and put it in that place. That is responsibility. When they go to school, you appoint them class prefect. That is responsibility. When you give them, they also say children are leaders of tomorrow. I say, don't appoint children as your prefect or your pastor, go and appoint parents, because the children are still supposed to lead tomorrow. And that is the problem of our nation. We tell our children that leaders of tomorrow and leaders of tomorrow without letting them know that they are already leaders of today, playing the role of leadership right now. And it is that as they grow up in life, the kind of leadership role they are going to be playing is going to be different. A child might be encouraging another one. That is a role of leadership. A child might protect another one. That is role of leadership.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The man I like to call Principal Taiwo Akinlami. Thank you also my co-host Debbie for being here. So guys, this is all for today. Watch out for the next episode. God bless you.